Hello, all. Welcome to the info spot for student veterans. My name is Brandon, and I'll be your host for today. I'm a second-year student in the Cleveland State University Occupational Therapy Doctorate Program, and today we'll be discussing some helpful strategies for mitigating the negative effects of having a bad day. Before we dig in, I'd like to introduce my co-host and give a brief overview of what exactly is occupational therapy. This is my co-host, Miriam. Miriam, say hello and give a brief introduction.
Hi everyone. My name is Miriam, and I'm also a second-year occupational therapy student at Cleveland State University, and I'm excited to join you, Brandon, today. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. Okay, so what is occupational therapy? Which is a question that we tend to get a lot. Despite the name, occupational therapy, or OT, is not solely focused on a person and their job or occupation. While your job can be a major component of OT, we tend to focus on the person as a whole. OT helps individuals achieve the independence to do tasks, activities, or as we call them, occupations, that we need to do and the occupations we want to do.
Yeah, and you can find occupational therapists in various settings such as hospitals, nursing homes, schools, businesses. There's lots of other places. We may be working on your shoulder to get back to functional capacity after a stroke so you can cook for yourself, or we may be addressing handwriting with a child, advocating for accommodations at work or at school after an accident, or even running a life skills group.
Yeah, absolutely. The applications for OT can truly be endless. So today we're discussing something that I think no one is exempt from, and that is having a bad day. I know I've had my share. Miriam, what about you?
Oh, I've had plenty. Yeah, the stress definitely gets to me sometimes.
Oh, for sure. For the veteran population, having a bad day can have far-reaching effects that can amplify conditions like PTSD, depression, or anxiety. And OTs are well positioned to provide resources and strategies to help mitigate some of these effects. And that's what we intend to do today. However, today may feature some conversations that could be triggering for the veteran or the general population. So if you do feel overwhelmed, please feel free to pause the video and step away from the content. So what is a bad day? Miriam, what does having a bad day mean to you?
I mean, for me, it's definitely an overall feeling of stress and anxiety. One thing goes wrong and it just is enough to put me over the edge and really change my perspective on the day. I tend to get more like pessimistic or negative and really just can't work my way out of it sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I can very much relate to that. Sometimes it can just completely put you in a spiral and like things that I'm supposed to do, I just never end up getting around to.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we've all been there. Having a bad day can come with a variety of nasty side effects, like increased anxiety, which is something that we've mentioned, loss of interest and or motivation, anger, irritation, or you may forget about some of your duties. You can experience a loss of appetite, issues sleeping, or you may forget things like your wallet, your keys, a phone charger. Sadly, some of these effects can even perpetuate subsequent bad days, like the lack of sleep or a loss of appetite, which may lead to not one bad day, but several in a row.
Yeah, and I know that I've often had a string of bad days where, these symptoms quickly turn into this vicious cycle where it's just constantly, disrupting things that I need to get done. And so, what kind of effects does this have on student veterans or even the veteran population in general? Because I know that, there's a lot of things that can be done for this, but it's often not really discussed.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a lot of veterans, PTSD is unfortunately a common condition that many of them have. And having a bad day or a series of bad days can really exacerbate the negative effects of PTSD. Anxiety, depression, insomnia, and irritability can all be dramatically intensified. In addition to those, a bad day can trigger hyperfixation on the veteran's actions, their flashbacks, guilt, create social withdrawal, and isolation. Veterans take a great amount of well-deserved pride in their role as a team member when they served. And this sense of pride and mentality about their time served can be a really highly motivating factor when it comes to the occupations that they partake in when they return home. Many invest in education opportunities, take on gainful employment, or donate their time to volunteer services. And this same mentality, unfortunately, can at times cause veterans to socially withdraw and isolate.
So, Brandon, how exactly can bad days cause isolation to occur?
Yeah, so when a veteran experiences a bad day and its effects, and it can lead to feelings of guilt and shame. Veterans may view themselves as a burden to their family or friends, or they have the fear that things will just never get better. This negative outlook can often lead to withdrawal from friends and family and from resources. The isolation can have a compounding effect on conditions like we discussed, like PTSD or depression. And at this point, the individual could be at risk for suicidal ideation.
Yeah, and Brandon, as you know, suicide is already such a major concern for veteran population. The Veterans Association estimates that 17 veteran suicide deaths occur each day in the United States, which is a very unfortunate number and often far too high. And experts actually fear that this number is way higher.
Yeah, I know that they fear that a lot of unreporting goes on, so it actually could be higher. So it's easy to see that while a bad day may be like a hassle or inconvenience for many of us to deal with, these bad days can have really serious effects on our veteran population, especially the student veteran population who is struggling with the stress of their academic goals as well.
Yeah, so what exactly can be done to combat the effects of a bad day? Because often we are so caught up in our feelings that we're currently going through that we often don't know what to do when those feelings actually occur. So, what are some resources that are available specifically for veterans?
Yeah. So Miriam, there's a variety of ways that OT can help veterans who are struggling with having a bad day. We can provide one-on-one interventions to address specific symptoms like anxiety, lack of motivation, resiliency, or even coping skills.
So OTs can also help facilitate group activities that focus on these same skills as well, including behavioral therapy or even like components of behavioral therapy, time management skills, and emotional regulation techniques, especially when the feelings are too overwhelming.
Yeah, group interactions can really be incredibly beneficial. I'm glad that you brought them up. Another critical way to support veterans when dealing with a bad day is connection to resources in general. And that's a bulk of what we're going to be covering today. So before we begin, it's important to kind of also remember that we need to treat each veteran we interact with respect and realize that this population, they're not a monolith, but a widely diverse group of individuals.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. So where exactly do we begin with this?
Okay, so I'm gonna bring up just a real quick PowerPoint here.
Okay.
Um, okay, so to start, we can see that research has identified that social withdrawal or isolation is not an ideal method when dealing with the fallout from a bad day. As discussed a moment ago, this can correlate with suicidal ideation. Miriam, you actually found some research that points us in a good direction. So what was that?
Yes. So I found a research study that compared several different strategies when it came to coping with traumatic careers, such as, policemen, firefighters, first responders. And while they're quite different from veterans, they actually face a lot of the same similar trauma experiences. And witness a lot of things that can be relatable. So the researchers found that several interventions often offered some moderate results, but overall the strongest option was problem focused and emotion oriented approach coping programs. These programs had a positive outlook and fewer instances of intrusive thoughts. And however, it's really important that it should be noted that these programs were tailored to first responders and the general public, which will not always, general public won't always have access to these resources specifically. So it's
Yeah,
really tailored to these first responders, which you often don't hear about. So I thought that that was a really cool resource to, incorporate into this.
oh yeah, absolutely. So it still kind of bears the question, like what supports do veterans have access to? So for starters, a good first step is to pinpoint the problem. So looking for signs that your day may be kind of headed south and what that can mean for your outlook and disposition is really a key factor.
Well, and Brandon, I know sometimes that's, hard to do, like I had said in the moment, especially when it's occurring. So what are some ways that we can, do that and go about that?
Yeah, so they recommend to take just kind of a moment throughout your day and kind of take stock of what has happened so far, what actions have taken place so far. Did you snap at someone unexpectedly? Have others' body language changed around you? Or did something like forgetting your keys or getting stuck in traffic happen that may have triggered a bad day? If you can find a specific reason, try to name it. So for instance, I'm having a bad morning because I spilled my coffee in the car, which has happened several times. This can help frame your perspective for the remainder of the day. It can help give you a goal to work on as your day progresses and hopefully gets better. If the reason you identified has a simple solution, one way to kind of quickly turn around a bad day would be to take action to resolve the problem. So kind of like sending an email off to a colleague or a professor, making a quick phone call to set up a meeting. If you were able to find a specific reason or trigger to your bad day, we can learn from it. Recognizing triggers leading to a bad day can help us avoid them in the future. In some cases, for example, if your morning commute was strenuous and may have triggered bad days at work or school, you might try to find alternative routes that minimize traffic or carpool with classmates.
Yeah, I know definitely sometimes taking like the calmer road or the back roads definitely is a really good form of relaxation for me. So what if we can't pinpoint a simple solution or even the reason for having a bad day?
Actually, you found an article that suggests a really helpful strategy on kind of the other end of the spectrum. When you can't find a specific problem, you can always be grateful for the things that you do have. So, Miriam, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So gratitude is an easy and simple way to focus on the positive. When you're experiencing a bad day and can't pinpoint an easy solution, gratitude can often help to stay positive and rewire some of those negative emotions that you may be feeling.
What are like some easy ways to embrace gratitude? Because I know that's not always, it's kind of easier said than done.
Definitely. Yeah. So, you can come up with a few examples before the day happens and write them down on a note, like a note card, or take a picture of them and reference them on your phone later on. A simple exercise to ask yourself, despite this day, what are three good things going on right now? And saying them out loud or writing them down in the moment can help to, keep these positive things in your mind and kind of set your day in the right direction. Also, your answers do not need to be complex. Something as simple as, well, at least the coffee didn't spill on me, or I'm only 10 minutes late instead of a half hour being late, can also help. They're just, really simple strategies to kind of just quickly change your perspective, even in the slightest bit.
Yeah, absolutely. What about volunteering? Do you think giving back, does that have any sort of effect?
Yeah, Brandon, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I had actually done a blog topic on that. And
Awesome.
yeah, it definitely does. Volunteering can drive any negative thoughts and help restore the veteran's sense of purpose. Veterans are well known for their commitment to service, work, and volunteering, especially in their communities. And this option can often help combat the stress of a bad day and help refocus the veteran's sense of purpose, and even help them to get back to their personal goals. It really emphasizes their strengths and helps them to look at the positives rather than the negatives. So I thought that, definitely volunteering is a great option.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that information.
Yeah.
Sometimes, however, our bad days are a little bit more insidious and they're not as easy to combat. Often our own minds will kind of snowball a bad day into something bigger than it actually is. And research suggests that how we think about our bad days may have a big impact on their actual outcomes. They end up kind of, these bad days become a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. So, how can we change our outlook on these bad days in general? The evidence says to distract ourselves. So, Miriam, what are some ways you think that we can distract ourselves?
Hmm. Maybe trying something new.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the first of 5 solutions I found to distract your brain and potentially keep your mind off a bad day. So, one is try a new restaurant for lunch or dinner, perhaps a place you've heard everyone raving about, or even a completely new type of food. Catch up. Number 2 is catch up with a friend or family member you haven't spoken to in some time. 3 is listen to a new type of music, something you may be unfamiliar with, to take your mind off of things.
That's
4 is
cool.
take a walk outside in an area that you've not explored before. Nature has been shown to reduce stress and anxiety that a bad day can bring. And 5 is watch a scene from your favorite show or a clip from a comedy routine.
Actually, Brandon, I'm kind of an old soul. I love watching scenes from I Love Lucy. Always makes me laugh. She's such a character.
Yeah,
Even like New Girl gets me in a good mood too. And so these really do work. Even the show, I loved the one that you mentioned about music. That really does help me too. And I can actually have a suggestion. I actually have a suggestion that would help. That has a lot of science to back it up. Do you mind if I share that?
absolutely. Go right for it.
Okay. So when I'm having a bad day and I feel things are starting to kind of spiral, I have found that some form of physical activity helps me. I was reminded by the walk outside off your list. Physical activity has been proven to be an effective way against increased levels of stress and anxiety. It doesn't have to be a strenuous workout, but something to get your body just moving and helping you turn things around and kind of looking at things differently. Even just being, in nature, kind of just being able to contemplate your thoughts and really just get everything out. It's a really great way to express it without, you know,
Yeah,
going outwardly.
yeah, absolutely. What are like some of your favorite ways to get moving?
Personally, I love to take a quick walk. I live on a hill, so definitely gives me a good workout. I love
Yeah.
to, do some mindful stretching, especially on my shoulders and stuff, because I get really tense around there. And then I also love to do deep breathing exercises and even just,
Nice.
listening to my favorite music, moving around a little bit. These are just some ways that I find to be helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And it's kind of funny because the dancing one actually kind of you can combine it with the previous suggestion of listening to something new to distract yourself. So
Yeah,
great
there you
suggestions.
go.
So unfortunately, a bad day doesn't always equate to feelings of sadness or depression. Anger can often be an indicator of a bad day, and anger can be internalized or externalized, and the latter can often lead to damage to professional or personal relationships and lead to isolation. Anger can be harmful, but there are ways to minimize it.
So what exactly are some of these ways?
So, kind of like our previous strategy of pinpointing on the problem, recognizing your anger, acknowledging the anger, and attempting to find what triggered it can be really helpful in this situation.
So, Brandon, I know I'm guilty of this. Anger can happen quite fast. I'm definitely one to, sometimes react pretty quickly. And I know some other people in my life are, really short-tempered. So, um, how do we recognize these signs and, really work to decrease this? Because I know it could be really challenging, especially, like I said, in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point because anger can sneak up on you.
Mhm.
But there may be a few indicators to pay attention to. So you want to look out for things like increased heart rate, fast or shallow breathing, flushing of your face, clenched fists, or other impulsive movements. When you begin to recognize one or more of these, it may be time to kind of take a step away from the situation and collect your thoughts. A timeout can have a huge effect on the outcome of your anger. And some things to consider is, can this problem be solved later? Is this response helpful and does it provide a solution? Am I staying true to my values and what I believe and what is the best for everyone in this situation?
I really like those suggestions, and they seem like a good place to start for someone who's experiencing anger. Are there any other strategies, though? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, so there is something that has been researched recently and is which is called grounding techniques or mindfulness. The results are promising when it comes to helping us regulate some tough emotions, including anger. Grounding techniques are especially helpful with dealing with traumatic events, anxiety, and stress, but have also been shown to help with anger. Um,
So, what exactly are some of these common grounding techniques?
Yeah, there's a lot out there. So they span kind of a lot of different domains. So which is nice because it can kind of be unique to you depending on your preferences. But I'll break down a few of the more common ones. Body awareness is a popular one and includes something that you mentioned earlier, which was like mindful and focused breathing. So breathing out or in through your nostrils and out through your mouth for a
Mhm.
set number of seconds. This can help clear your mind and recenter yourself. Actually, like stomping your feet on the ground, focusing on how your feet makes contact with the ground, provided it's in a safe environment and away from other people, can be a useful outlet for anger. Pressing your palms together and then
Okay.
even moving them back and forth can also be beneficial. Mentally categorizing is a good mental exercise. So listing your favorite movies, books, cars, television shows, or sports teams can help refocus your mind. And probably the most popular one is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method.
Okay, so I have never heard of this before. What exactly is that?
Okay, we can actually run through it together right now. So what you do is you start with 5 things that you can see,
Okay.
4 things that you can feel,
Hmm.
3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and you finish with lastly 1 thing that you can taste.
Hmm.
So kind of focusing on the small details using your senses that your mind would usually tune out can refocus and help diffuse your anger and anxiety.
I really like that technique. I've never thought about that before. So that was really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
I do wonder though, what happens when one's anger gets the best of them? What solutions do we have for them then?
So, well, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but there is something the veteran can do should they find themselves in a losing battle with anger or the law. There is a veterans court available to those who have served and it is set up to help assist veterans with legal situations.
Hmm.
Let's honestly hope that none of our veterans need to take advantage of that, but it is available.
Well, we can definitely hope it doesn't come to that, but it's
Yeah.
nice to know it's there. Are there any other resources that we have for student veterans? Because I know that often goes under the radar and not really thought of that much.
Yeah. So when it comes to having a bad day, there are a ton of useful resources out there, and we've only really scratched the surface.
Mhm.
However, we don't have the time to outline each and every one. So we're going to end with probably one of the most critical suggestions they have out there.
Mhm.
Um,
And what exactly is that?
so as we discussed before, a bad day can be a very difficult thing for a veteran to cope with, and
Okay.
isolation is common in this population.
Mhm.
Suicidal thoughts can happens to be just as common, and bad days can snowball easily and transform into traumatic events. So, one of the most helpful strategies to keep in mind is reaching out for when things get tough. Connecting with family or friends is an excellent first step. You can reach out to the VA or your medical provider who can put you in touch with professionals trained to help with intrusive or suicidal thoughts. And lastly, if things kind of escalate very quickly and you need to reach out urgently, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline has actually recently streamlined how it operates.
That is so right. I actually remember that now that we've talked about it in class. And actually, I do remember that you can dial 988 on your phone and it'll get you to the crisis hotline.
Yes, it is absolutely it's much easier now. Um and but I think a really important question too is how does one or one's loved ones know when a situation is in need for urgent help? So we should probably outline some of the most common signs of a crisis that could indicate suicidal ideation. Miriam, what are some of the more prevalent signs?
Well, some signs to look out for are acting recklessly or engaging in risky activities that could lead to death, such as driving too fast or running red lights, seemingly without thinking. Showing violent behavior, such as punching holes in the wall, getting into fights, or engaging in self-destructive violence, feeling rage or uncontrolled anger, or even seeking revenge. Um, Giving away prized possessions, putting affairs in order, tying up loose ends, and or making out of a will. And then also seeking access to firearms, pills, or other means of harming oneself. So these are all things that are really important to look out for, especially as family members and loved ones.
Yeah, and in fact, when using the suicide and crisis hotline, veterans can dial 988 and then actually hit 1 to be connected to team members to facilitate conversations with veterans specifically. And this service is 24/7 and free as well as confidential. The most important thing to remember is that when a bad day gets too much to handle, is that you are not alone and you are not a burden, and there are people willing to listen and to help.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Brandon. And I just want to reiterate again, the suicide and crisis lifeline is 988, and for veteran services, it's 988-1.
Yes. Having a bad day can be hard, but the strategies to minimize the effects do not have to be. So we do have some helpful links that have a variety of strategies to fit your needs, some that we've discussed. So if you feel the weight of having a bad day, please check them out and hopefully turn your day around. So thank you much, Miriam, for all your help and insight today.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I actually learned quite a lot today, and so I'm really glad I got to join you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So this has been the info spot. Thank you so much for watching.